Hi y'all, I'm Brenda with Blessings and Bread. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my meatloaf recipe. I've had this recipe since I was a young girl in 4-H, and I might share a little more about that with you as I make this recipe. But today I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to make and how delicious meatloaf can be. And I'm also going to show you two little tricks that will help you save time today and in the future. I'm going to be making my meatloaf today with about 3 pounds of ground deer meat. Now this is the deer that my husband killed in the fall of last year during hunting season, and he processed it himself. And what he always does is he always adds some pretty fatty hamburger meat into his deer meat when he processes it, because deer meat is a very dry meat and not as fatty as hamburger meat would be. So this is probably, I don't know what his mix is. Maybe it's an 80-20 mix of deer meat and hamburger meat. And that's what we're going to be using today. And I'm using 3 pounds because that's my little tip. I'm going to save time by making extra meatloaf and then freezing it to cook at a later time. So let's get started with this. I'm going to put my meat aside because I'm going to start with all the ingredients that go into the meatloaf. Now, my meatloaf's a little different in that we don't like really saucy meatloaf. So my meatloaf recipe has no tomato sauce in it. But what I do use is, for every pound of meat, I like to use 1 large egg. And I'm going to crack these eggs into my bowl, and then we're going to mix those together. And then I will add all of my other ingredients to this bowl and then add it to the ground meat. Now you can use any kind of ground meat that you want to make this recipe. I have made it for years when we didn't have deer meat with hamburger meat. I would recommend using a pretty low-fat hamburger meat content. You know, maybe even, I think you can buy 93.7, or I would probably go with the lowest fat content of ground beef that I could find. My daughter doesn't eat red meat, and she can even make this recipe with ground pork, which is, surprisingly, you may not know, it's actually white meat. All right, our eggs are combined, so now I'm going to begin to add the other ingredients to this. And I don't use any tomato sauce, but I do use a little ketchup, and I don't measure. This is one of those things where you can put in as much as you want. I probably am using, for this 3-pound recipe, I may have used 1/4 of a cup, maybe. But it's not a lot. The next thing I'm going to add are my spices. And I don't use a whole lot of spice, but I have about a teaspoon of garlic. This is probably about 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper, or a teaspoon of black pepper. It's about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I don't use a lot of salt because another ingredient that I use that I think makes my meatloaf delicious is I'm going to use beefy onion soup mix. Now, I originally did not use this in my soup mix. I used originally this recipe called for just minced onions and milk. But I tweaked it, and now I just make it with this, and it makes a delicious recipe. Because I'm doing 3 pounds of meat, I'm going to use 2 packages of the instant soup mix. Now, I will say this. I really wanted to make 4 pounds today, and that's what I wish I could have done. But my husband only got 1 deer this year, and we are not going to have deer meat very long. So I decided not to use up all the deer meat or 4 whole pounds today. So I just doing it with 3 pounds. If I was doing 4 pounds, I would still probably only use 2 packages of the Lipton soup mix. And notice it's the beefy onion, not just the onion. Although that would probably work, but I think the beefy gives it this pretty good flavor. All right, now the next thing I'm going to add to this is I'm going to add, for every pound of meat I have, I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs. And I like to use the seasoned ones, the Italian style. They have, let's see what's in there. It probably just says spices. I bet it doesn't say. No, it does say it has dried parsley spice. Yeah. Onion powder and paprika. Those are the things that are listed that we would know. So that just saves a little time. It gives a little more. But I have, again, a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs for every pound of hamburger meat. And I'm going to mix that in. And I know from experience I'm going to need a spoon at this point because my little whisk will get all clogged up because this is going to get pretty thick now. Normally, a meatloaf recipe would call for milk with your breadcrumbs, and honestly, my original recipe called for coffee creamer. I originally came across this magazine when I was a teenager in a magazine, back in the good old days when magazines were worth reading and wasn't just all ads. And I guess it probably was an ad, though, for coffee creamer. And it was meatloaf using coffee creamer, and then you added water. So that's originally what this recipe called for. And I've tweaked it over the years, and I don't use the coffee creamer anymore, but I could. And instead, I use this soup mix and hot water. So now I need to go to my microwave and heat my water just a little bit. I don't want it boiling hot. I just want it hot enough that it'll help to dissolve the beef broth a little bit, or the beef soup mix just a little bit, but not hot enough that it'll cook these eggs. So I will be right back after I get my water heated, and we're actually going to add the same amount of water that I added in breadcrumbs. So it was a 1.5 cups of breadcrumbs, so it's going to be a 1.5 cups of water. And I will be back when this is hot. All right, I cooked my water in the microwave for about 2 minutes, and now I'm going to add that to the other ingredients. And just stir it till it's all kind of mixed together. So that's what the ingredients for the meatloaf looks like. All right. Now the final step here is to get our meat back, and we're actually going to add the slurry. Well, it's not a slurry, but add the other ingredients to the meat. And I'm going to start, because this is so, let me get a spoon. I'm going to start because it's so juicy with a spoon, and begin stirring this in with a spoon. Kind of get it going a little bit, but eventually the only way to mix this the best is to get in there and mix it with your hands. do have a story about my meatloaf in that my father-in-law came to visit, and I don't think he was a fan of meatloaf, but he definitely said he didn't like deer meat. And we did not tell him that my meatloaf was made out of deer meat, so he decided to try the meatloaf. And then he began to brag and brag and brag on my meatloaf. He's like, that's the best meatloaf I've ever tasted. And that is just delicious meatloaf. I usually don't even like meatloaf. And he was just bragging and bragging on it. And then finally we had to come clean and we told him it was deer meat. And then after that, for a while, every time we were together or he was coming to eat with us, he wanted me to make my meatloaf with deer meat. So, all right, that is the meatloaf. And then I'm going to wash my hands, and then we're going to put it into the pans. And I'm going to show you my other tip that helps you save time. The other trick that I have learned to do is I no longer cook my meatloaf in a loaf pan. I have begun to cook my meatloaf in these Texas-size muffin tins, and it makes just about the perfect serving size for most people. Sometimes if I'm not real hungry, I'll only even eat half of one. I think today one of the things I want to do is to measure. I'm going to find out exactly how much meatloaf is in each of the muffin tins, and because I've never thought to measure that, and now I'm curious now that I'm making it for you and trying to pull the recipe together in a little more efficient way. I'm going to actually measure how much I put into one of these. And I think I have two of these, and this one is might be a little bit larger, but they're very similar in size. Let's see. Yeah, they won't stack inside each other. This one's smaller, I think, than the newer one. All right, so this is just the Wilton Texas size muffin pan, and I am going to spray each little muffin tin pretty well with my baking spray. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and wipe off the top, because that will get all gunky if you cook that on top. It will make my pan gunky. Is that a word, gunky? Well, you know what I mean. It will certainly make the pan have kind of a film of grease on there. All right, so now, and I just usually do this with my hands, I'm going to just fill the muffin tin to the top, pat it in there until they're kind of to the top. That might be a little too much. And that one. I'm going to put about 4 in this one, and I'm going to bake these for supper tonight. No, I think I'm going to go ahead and fill all of these up. And then my other trick is I'm going to actually freeze these. I'm going to freeze these in the muffin tin, and then once they're frozen, I will be able to pop them out and put them in a Ziploc bag to use for another day. These make great, easy meals, so that then I can just pop in the oven. Because I'm making it in this muffin tin, it doesn't take as long to bake. Usually about 40 to 45 minutes at 350 is about how long it takes to bake these. And I just watch them and use a thermometer. I believe meatloaf cooks to 165 degrees Fahrenheit, so I usually always use a thermometer and make sure it's good and done. All right, what I want to do though is I want to measure now before I fill up my other tin, and I want to use my scale. I have a little bowl here, and I'm going to turn my scale on, and then I'm going to put my bowl down, and this is measuring in grams, which actually I'll switch to ounces because so many people think in terms of ounces in America but I'm going to zero out the bowl. I learned something the other day. They call that tare when you do that. So basically this scale just removed the weight of the bowl. So now I'm going to take this out of one of these and put it in here and see how many ounces it is. That is a little bit over 7.5 ounces. So this is almost a pound, half a pound. So it is a lot of meat, and that tells me why sometimes I don't eat a whole one. Now, the men in my house almost always eat a whole one. So that's exciting to know. It's right around 8 ounces or half a pound. All right, now I am going to move this aside and go ahead and see how many I'm running out. So, no, I'm going to fill this one because I keep getting confused. I am going to freeze these 6. Well, I hope I have enough left for supper because I'm hoping to cook the others. All right, so I have 6 here, hoping to freeze. We will see if I have enough. I may have to steal one of those in a minute. I'm going to have to wash my hands again because I didn't spray that pan yet. And that pan, I don't want to get my can of spray all yucky. So I am going to now, I'm only going to spray 4 of these because I don't think I have enough for, well, my hand's wet. And I can't even hold on and spray. All right, there we go. We're going to spray this pan. My hand keeps slipping. The jar's greasy and my hand's wet. All right, let's try it again. Keep dropping. Okay. And you can see I'm spraying that pretty generously because I want it to come out when it's done. Sorry, my pan is maybe warped a little bit. All right, so I want at least 3 of these for supper, and it looks like that's exactly what I'm going to get. So with that, we won't have any leftovers today, but I think that works out perfectly. And these are not quite as full. I'll eat this one that's not quite so full, and the boys can have these that are full. I think maybe these are more or bigger than the others, but they may not be. I'm not going to double check that, but this is, I'm just going to use these and bake these tonight. Now, I may put a little bit of water in each of these empty things, and that will help from warping my pan further than it already is. So I will bake these at 350 degrees for about 40 to 45 minutes. I'll probably set it for 40, check the temperature and check on it, and then decide if they need to cook longer. It's best if they're all about the same size. This one's a little smaller, but I think it'll be okay because I won't mind if mine's a little bit drier. This is a very moist recipe too, I will say. So we're going to freeze 6 and I'm going to bake 3. And again, this is such a great tip because a lot of times I have these in the freezer, and if we have a family in the church that's sick and we need to be taking food to them, I already have meatloaf ready. I can pop those out for the number of people in their family, bake those, add some green beans and cream potatoes to them, and that is like excellent comfort food, right? To me, meatloaf is just one of those standard comfort foods that I've been eating all my life. All right, I'm going to get these in the oven and get the others in the freezer, and we will be back. Now, be sure when you put these in the freezer that you cover them. I usually cover them with the press and seal wrap. Hopefully I have enough. I'm getting low. But I usually use this press and seal because I can seal out the air. And like I said, within 24 hours, they're probably going to be frozen solid. Then I can bring them in the kitchen and just pop them out like you would ice cubes, and then put them in a Ziploc bag and freeze them so that I can just take them out and bake them. And when I do that, I even bake them just on a cookie sheet. They will hold their shape. All right, we'll be back. All right, the meatloaf is done, and while the meatloaf was cooking, I made some cream potatoes. To me, that's the perfect side dish for meatloaf. And I made cream potatoes, and then I had a package of cream spinach. So that is going to be my supper tonight, and I can't wait to see how it tastes. This particular deer meat that we have this year looks kind of darker. It was a doe, and so the meat looks a little different, but I'm anxious to see how this tastes. This was probably the first meatloaf I've made with this year's deer. That did not disappoint, and I hope you can see inside. I did cook it till it was 165 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's perfectly done on the inside. I actually looked that up, and they said 160 was what you should cook hamburger meat to. So this is delicious. This is the perfect meal. I did some cream spinach with it, but you could add green beans or broccoli or a side salad to add to this with the cream potatoes, and it makes a perfect meal. Now, before I go, I have a question though. I saw on the internet where there was a big debate over whether mashed potatoes and cream potatoes were the same thing. So what do you think? I think cream potatoes are when you use your mixer and cream them with the mixer, and mashed potatoes are when you use your potato masher. So I think they're different. What do you think? And I'm glad you came by today. I hope you enjoyed this meatloaf recipe, and I will see you the next time I'm in my kitchen, on my porch, or in my garden. Bye.